Hello and welcome to episode 17, or in between 16 and 17 because this is a strange time to record this. Now we just have our craft here, and we're going to be bringing this back in the previous episode, which a little bit of time funniness. But what we want to do is we want to start docking because we haven't actually done a good docking yet. So how about we take our probe here. What we're going to say is we are going to say control from here on the probe before we undock it, because it has plenty of electric charge. I guess it doesn't matter. So let's just undock it. I thought when I clicked on the probe it didn't have electric charge in it, so I was a little bit concerned. What we'll actually do is we'll open up the other one before we undock this, and I want to actually extend to this panel. That way our plane can recharge its batteries, and we'll undock this. Let's see. Decouple node. Now we need to switch to it. And I think this is going to switch us to the other thing. Nope, here we are. We've switched to our probe, and what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of push ourselves out of this docking bay. Very gently, so we don't break anything. Since we do want this probe intact, just going to use little spurts of RCS until we're further away. And we will be good. Now, actual docking. What you want to do is first you want to at least have an idea on where you're going to be docking. I can tell I'm going to be docking to this docking port right there, or even the one on the right. It doesn't really matter from our target, but let's get closer first. So we should have plenty of Delta V in our RCS tank. So if I can actually point towards my target, it's actually upside down. That's strange. We'll control it from the docking port and it will be the way it needs to be. Actually, yes, it's upside down, so I'm burning the wrong way. Now, your keys, N moves you forward, or moves you backwards, since, let's just control from the docking port. That way, this will be easier to explain. Yes, much easier. So, when you use RCS, H moves you forward, which means the thrusters burn backwards. N moves you backwards, so they burn backwards. I, J, and K, and L, I, J, K, L, are the other keys. They burn you in a multitude of directions. Now, the trick with this is being able to know which one goes where. And my suggestion is to rotate so that the keys each point in the direction you go. What I mean by that is, for example, I've rotated so that what happens with my craft is when I hit I, you'll notice the thrusters burn downwards, meaning I'm going to move up. That's my translate. When I hit J, I'm going to move to the right, which is where my thrusters burn, and when I hit K, I'm going to move to the left. So this is actually inverted, but this is the way I prefer to do it. So I will move me up, K will move me down, J will move me to the right, and then L moves me to the left. Just because L and left is the way I remember left and right, and then up and down are, of course, I is above K, so I moves me up. This is just how I remember it. You can remember it any way you want. I just recommend making sure you're aligned in a pattern that you understand. Now what we need to do is we need to actually stop ourselves from moving towards this thing. So you can do a lot of this with the nav ball, which is what I'm actually doing right now. So we have the solar panel enabled. This docking port over here is our target. So we're going to say set as target. And now we're targeting that docking port. Which means, since we're going to dock with it now that we're closer, let's align ourselves with the docking port. It's pretty much directly on the 270 axis. So we're going to keep ourselves pointed straight at the target based just on our kind of eyeballing it. You can see that when we're aligned, we should be facing about this way. And now we know it's to the right of us. So let's start translating that way. Now we're going to translate to the right. And what this is going to do is, if you notice the retrograde vector, or I should make us move forward a little bit. Now we're moving towards our target. If you look on the nav ball, we're moving towards the target. And as you can see, we are. Except I think we're moving forward a little too quickly. So we're going to halt our forward momentum and just move to the side right now. So what you'll notice is we are not controlling our angle, but our target is now coming in to where our actual angle is. And this is what we want to do. So, now that we're getting closer to our target, let's stop all our movement. We'll control our prograde vector, of course using the RCS, and we'll slow down. We'll keep using the RCS to make it so we're not moving. Now we need to eyeball it again. So we're not quite angled with that docking port perfectly. Or we might be. We might be pretty well angled. The docking port's just on an angled piece, so it looks a bit strange. I'd say we're pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're a little bit lower than it. So how about we focus on that with up and down. So we'll move up a little bit until, of course, our target marker is now aligned on the up and down axis with our probe. And once it is, now that it is, we will of course use our RCS to stop that motion. And now it's still a little bit on the left and right axis, it's not aligned. So what we'll do is we'll move our vector over until, of course, our target moves towards us. I'm just looking at the nav ball right now. And now that our target is centered, what we can do is we can stop our motion and make sure it looks like we're doing all right. So far it looks pretty good. Now we're going to move towards our target. So if I hit the right key, we'll now start moving towards our target about half a meter per second. You don't need to go any faster than this. And we'll make sure that we stay moving towards our target. We won't change our angle. We won't go left and right. We will stay facing the exact same way we were. And now we'll just use our RCS to control where we need to go. So if the target's moving above us, we'll move down. We'll even slow down if we need to. And we'll keep everything aligned. And now we'll just make sure that our target is being pushed back towards us with our prograde vector. Of course, you can see it gets really sensitive at the last instant, and now we're docked. I did that entirely looking at the nav ball. I didn't actually need to look at my target. And we're aligned pretty well. This is the way I wanted to align these in the first place, so that these are facing sideways, although it doesn't really matter. But now, since we're going to be docking to this one, we'll do it again, and this time I'll do more visual and less nav ball. So we're just going to pull our target back up with us using our node here, either retrograde or prograde. Prograde will push it, retrograde will pull it. It's actually complete opposite when you're docking here. Since retrograde pulls you towards your target when you're not moving, prograde... Okay, I need to explain this when I'm not trying to focus on docking. Now, you don't need to use the nav ball entirely. You can just do visually, making sure that you're watching it. I said I'd do a visual check of this. So you can see we're a little bit high, but I think we should be fine since these do have magnetic clamps. We're a little bit too much to the side, so we'll turn a little bit and we'll even rotate some to make sure we're coming in solid. And I think we're good. And there we go. We were a bit high, but we managed to dock anyway. Now, let me try to say what I was going to say. Now, it's hard to explain, but when you actually look at the nav ball, when you're docking, or when you hold your own direction steady, then the prograde vector, when you're close to a target like that, you won't notice this if you're far away from a target, the prograde vector will push your target to you. And the reason it does that is it's a relative thing with your direction versus something else's direction. So if we actually look at the plane, then you can see that the plane is moving, you might be able to see it, the plane is moving very slightly to the left of us. So it's moving very slightly to the left, which means our relative location to the plane, we are moving to the right of the plane based on our view. So that's why the prograde vector pushes it when we don't change our own orientation, when we're just drifting like this, which is essentially what you're doing with RCS. And when you're retrograde, meaning you're moving away from the target, the retrograde vector will actually pull the target to you. So it sort of reverses itself. It's hard to really explain without a direct example to give you, but just imagine it as switching like that when you try and dock. It might make it easier, or I might be just completely confusing you. Anyhow, we've done our docking, which means that it's time to get this plane back onto the surface of Kerbal, but of course that's supposed to be done in the previous episode, so I'm going to leave the docking here. We'll find out what we're going to do next in this episode once I take care of the plane, so I'll see you then. Okay guys, so I just got back from landing that plane. It was exciting last episode, wasn't it? And yeah, just the chronological dysplasia. We'll just have to survive with it. It'll be over with these 2 episodes. The only two that they're the only 2 that are going to be intermingled. So, well, I can't say that. We might intermingle more, but there's not going to be like 3 episodes that they take part of. So I'm just going to finish up the episode 17, which we're part of. We just did some docking. And now we're going to do one more quick launch, since that only took about really 10 minutes or so, depending on how much I cut down when I edit. We'll see. Let's launch this thing. This is the Duna refinery. It's gotten overhaul to it. I've done a bunch of changes to it, fixed it up, made it a lot lighter. It's now designed not to come back, since previously it was kind of designed to come back. Now it's designed to stay on Duna once it lands. So it's got the parachutes, it's got less thrust to weight ratio, it's got more fuel tanks. It's designed to really just stay put once it hits the ground. So let's make sure our launch clamps are in the correct places. We will throttle up, make sure other staging is okay, good enough. And we got Leary, who is an engineer, and Alris, who is a pilot, so we get SAS since we don't have a probe on this thing. And let's go. Now this is using, again, this huge engine because it's amazing at thrust at sea level. It just has so much, it makes it incredibly easy to launch just about anything into space. So let's begin our turn a little bit. Now, did I not put struts to reinforce the top part of this? No, I did, just apparently not enough. Let's hope this thing gets to space. We're moving way too fast for something with this much strange top-heavy wobble potential. So let's instantly cut our throttle and hold up a little bit. Let's not go faster than 300 or really 250. We shouldn't. Otherwise we might run into problems. So now we can start throttling up more since we're higher in the atmosphere. Less chance of this thing snapping off like a twig, which would be incredibly unfortunate. Now, I know the last couple episodes have been much more real-time, much less post-editing. That's because I just haven't had the time to do the post-editing just yet. Since I mentioned it before, maybe I deleted that part. Anyway, I'm pretty much done moving. We're going to be doing a stream next week. I can pretty much guarantee that. I'll do its own little announcement video when I actually have the time that we'll be streaming. I'll just have a start time. It'll probably go for 2 or 3 hours, depending on how it actually goes. If it turns out that I'm boring and awful live, then we'll probably only go 2 hours. If it turns out that you guys want me to stay, we might be able to go another hour or so. We'll have to see when we get there, but that's definitely going to happen next week. There we go. We are pushing ourselves towards the target even closer. Now we're 0.8 kilometer separation, which isn't too bad. And of course, this is actually a pretty good idea to do, to just keep pushing yourself close to the target. That way, if your encounter is actually or your intersection is kind of far away, you'll be able to make it so your intersection is much closer. That way, when you pass by, you don't have to burn towards the target and then stop again. You can do it all in one. So you see, we're going to be about a little bit over 100 meters apart when we reach our closest point. There we go. We are now right next to our thing, and now it's time to dock. So this craft, I believe, was docking right on the top node. So let's open up our node here. Open shield. We are going to say control from here, and then we're just going to switch craft real fast so that we can open this one's shield. And we'll leave this thing. How about we do something that will probably help us? Let's tell this thing to point normal. Now the reason we're going to point normal is because that gives us a vector to dock against, which is going to make this docking a lot easier. So, by pointing normal, which means basically we're pointing in the same direction the North Pole points, which is straight up from our orbit, we can point anti-normal on our refinery, which will basically automatically align us. Maybe I have to disable it and re-enable it, since the probes might also have a little bit of influence on this. It doesn't appear as though my SAS is working. Oh, that's strange. Anyway, we'll just do this normally. Or without the pilot-assisted thing. So we'll lock our orientation pointing normal. And now we'll take this guy, and we will force his orientation to point anti-normal. Which, if we go into orbital mode, is right here. Now what does this mean? Well, this means that our two docking ports are currently aligned to each other. And since the two docking ports are aligned to each other, that means we've solved the alignment of the docking ports issue. So now that they're aligned, we're just going to hold SAS there. We're going to go back to target, and we're going to enable RCS. And now we're just going to use this again. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch my orientation to the way that I know it, since I don't, well, I could roll, I suppose. So let's roll to actually change this the way we usually like to have it. So that, of course, the familiar set of keys we have. So let's start moving. Now we're going to move away since I think we're a little too close. And like I said, RCS has much less of an effect, so you want to move slower with larger craft. That way you have more control, so in case you're going the wrong direction, you can change it. But if you move too fast, it'll take a while for you to change your direction. So I still think we're a little low. Actually, we look to be pretty fine right now. So we're just going to keep moving in the direction of our target. Now, this doesn't really mean much just yet. When we'll really start to see the difference is when we actually get close. So you can see on the nav ball, now we see our target. So now we have that target to work with again. So if we keep waiting, we'll drift closer. And just judging by where we need to be, I'm going to burn up a little bit more so that we can align ourselves better with this. And now once our target is directly below us, which it soon will be, we'll start burning this way, and we're going to overshoot a little bit, but we'll rebound. And there we go, our target is now moving still directly towards our current facing position. And once it moves right over it, we'll halt all of our motion again. So we'll just make sure it's fully aligned. We want to center it as best we can. And then give it a couple seconds to figure out where it's moving, so we can fix it. And now we're centered on our target. It's drifting a little bit, so we'll just casually fix that. Now if we hit H to move forward, you'll see our prograde vector is here. Now if our prograde vector, we're going to use it to push our target back over our facing direction. And once we are now facing it with the prograde, this is all done in the nav ball right now. You can do this visually, but I like to do it with the nav ball, it's a bit easier. And now that we're directly aligned with our target and our facing direction, we'll move our prograde vector over it as well. So now we have all three of these little circles and all three of these info bits that are on the nav ball aligned with each other, which means we are moving in the direction we're facing, which is the direction of the target. Which means, since we're moving nice and slow, we are going to dock with it. That's exactly what this tells us. And we're lined up nicely, as you can see. We're lined up kind of on the same axis, so that's fine. And we just have to play the waiting game. Of course, if this is moving at all, you can just redirect it by using your prograde vector to push your target back over your facing direction, and then move your prograde vector back. And you'll notice, boom, docked. Extremely easy. I think that was a much better explanation than the little ones, so we'll probably speed through the little ones a little bit more than I was originally going to plan to. Now, it's a little bit misaligned, but I'll be able to live with it. It's still perfectly balanced, and since it's on the top, this whole station should still be perfectly fine. What we will have to do right now, though, while I'm remembering to do it, is we need to shut down these two engines because they are no longer going to be doing anything. There we go. Now, I know originally that this thing I showed you guys in the VAB, this was going to be, this node was going to connect to that node, but since there's a node on both top and bottom, it honestly doesn't matter. So we're just going to connect it this way. We'll connect the last bit to the top of this, and it'll all work out. Hopefully none of the engines on either this refinery or the Eiklander will conflict with each other. I hope not, otherwise I might have to rotate this thing around. But that's going to be it for a different episode. This is episode 17 of my Mostly Stock career. I thank you all for watching. This is BTT GRW, signing out.